When the news came out for me, I couldn't believe it. This is something that you hear and you read about and you see on TV, or you see a documentary on, and this is happening in our city, to our town, to our team, and now to a player on this team. Unbelievable. You should have seen the faces of the girls. It was devastating to them. It was the saddest thing I've ever attended. The emotion of looking at these innocent girls sitting there and seeing all of the trust that they had placed in this man and as a team. And the parents, it was like a funeral. Their faces were stark white. No one could understand why this would have happened. It was awful. It was terrible.
I'm Greg Gilhooly. I grew up in Winnipeg, Manitoba, and I live just outside of Toronto now. Well, it's interesting. As easy as sports came to me, school was even easier. Life just came easy. So from the outside, I looked like I was a success, but on the inside, things were very different. Well, Graham James was a larger-than-life figure in Winnipeg hockey circles. When I talked to Graham, he was incredibly nice. He was incredibly supportive. This is the first time I'm talking to Graham. He said very good things about me as a person and me as a hockey player. And he said that he'd been watching me for a while and that when we get back to Winnipeg, we should get together. And he said, but don't tell your coaches and don't tell your parents. He didn't want, he said, my coaches to think that someone was interfering in my hockey development or with their team, and he didn't want my dad to know because it would make its way back to my coaches. After one of our sessions, I was clearly tired, and Graham said to me, he said, look, when you think about a hockey player, you have to have incredibly strong feet because the feet effectively coordinate everything, from the brain, the core, the leg muscles, to the blades. Can I take a look at your feet? And he took a look at them, and he liked what he saw. And so the barrier was broken, and foot massages after our workouts to massage the feet because they were so integral to how the body moves. Graham started massaging my feet after our workouts. How did my life change? It got really bad. I would try to explain to myself why I kept going back to him. And I would negotiate with myself, and I would debate against myself, and I would tell myself time and time again that someone who thought so much of me, who wanted so much for me, must clearly just not understand what's going on and how he's hurting me, that I'm not really wanting to do what he's wanting to do. I felt trapped mentally, emotionally. I had no way out. I certainly needed to run to somebody at that time. I certainly needed to tell somebody at that time. Problem is, the way that the grooming had worked, and I didn't know it was grooming at the time, and I certainly wasn't labeling it as grooming, but all I knew, I needed to tell somebody, but by that time, the only person I could tell was Graham.
My name's Alison Forsyth. I'm currently from Oakville, Ontario, originally from Vancouver Island, BC. My sport is alpine skiing, ski racing. Those of us that do it call it ski racing usually. So I've obviously thought about this a lot. When I first met him, he was not my coach. He was the coach of the Quebec ski team at the time. He was, as a person, how he showed up was extremely charismatic and confident. He knew what he was doing. He knew how to manipulate, talk the talk, make himself so powerful. I suddenly became the girl that he started to groom, pay more attention to, start to tell me things about my body, what he liked, what he think I needed to look like to ski faster. So there's promises you make if you stay with an abuser that are made to you that makes you feel, I felt complicit in it, like I felt responsible. And then there's the other side of what's going to happen to me if I don't stay with this person. He threatened to commit suicide. He said his family was going to kill him. I know now it sounds weird to say like my dad's going to kill me, but at the time I believed it. I tried to get away from him so many times that it became easier in my brain to stay with him than to leave.
My name is Stacey Ditchfield, and I am the parent of a player whose teammate was sexually abused by a coach. Moving into her going to the first tryout, it was all positive. I had never heard anything negative. There were many promises that were made to her by this coach, just beginning with, if you continue training, if you continue developing, if you stick with me, I will be able to give you exposure to the NCAA coaches. So the promises of what was going to happen in the years to come was always set at the forefront.
It's a myth if people feel like athletes tell their parents everything. It is a myth. I was 14, 15 when I left home. I felt like I grew up overnight. To be honest, for me, the last people I would have told would have been my parents, because I feel like I didn't want to let them down. People that work for organizations, people in power, people in authority, it's quite simple. Don't take the job unless you're willing to take this on as part of it. Don't work for an organization that is in the sporting world, that deals with children, that deals with athletes who are representing your country, and not be willing to do everything it takes to protect them and create a safe sport environment for them.
Absolutely, organizations have an obligation to create and foster an awareness that these things can happen, and they have an affirmative obligation, or should have an affirmative obligation, to implement rules to ensure as best as possible that it won't happen. My case is interesting in that Graham never coached me directly. I never lived with Graham. Graham was simply a mentor. He used his position within a sports organization to foster his ability to groom me. If you're an adult out there and you see something odd happening, again, don't be afraid to intervene. Truly do not be afraid to intervene.
So the rule of two is very simple, and a lot of people may think that, well, that doesn't prevent a coach from texting an athlete. But I can tell you, if you're not ever alone with that athlete in a conducive environment for something to happen, nothing will happen. So you need to keep a professionalism between the athlete and the coach. That's number one. And it's protecting the coach too. That's the thing, is people think the rule of two is about the athlete. Coaches need to figure out the rule of two is to protect them as well.
A lot of these coaches aren't paid. They do it because they love it, and now they've been grouped into this one bad incident. So for the rule of two, it protects them. And it allows them to be themselves, and it allows them to develop those players in a safe environment. And proactively moving forward, everybody should be aware of it.
All three of my children are going to go through sport, and I was sexually abused in the sports system. Because I have an awareness, I have a commitment to keeping them safe. I still have trust in coaches. I'm just smarter. I'm smarter in that I ask critical questions. I don't put my child into a sport that I don't know there's trust. As I mentioned, as an athlete, as a coach, as an administrator, take this stuff seriously. I would have given back every medal I ever won to have prevented this from happening to me. You have it all, like have everything, you know? So kids don't want to win that bad. And we need to understand that they don't want to win that bad to have these kind of stuff happen to them. This is not about sport and about anyone. It's not about you, whoever you are watching this video, whether you're an athlete, a coach, an administrator. It's about a change in the system so that we don't have to feel like we can't say anything. Like, this is about humanity, it's not about sport.